Hey, how's it going? It's Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. And the George Floyd protests continue, and they should. There's a time when we need to start doing, and I think if city leaders, and when I say city leaders, I don't mean just Los Angeles, I mean cities around the country. If they announced something that they were doing to change things, that would go a long way in reducing the need for protesters to be out there. And doing more than just at the police level. They still need to be fixing the economy. There are great concerns about the coronavirus, especially, I'm sure, among protesters, myself included. More on Trump, Donald Trump. After clearing protesters with tear gas, this was yesterday, remember? I was talking about this. So it was actually the day before yesterday. After clearing protesters with tear gas, rubber bullets, and flashbangs, so Donald Trump could pose with a Bible for a photo op in front of the Episcopal church there. Right after he said in a speech that he stands with protesters, he did this. This morning, he continued to claim he's with the peaceful protesters. But this is after arresting those peaceful protesters last night. Then this morning, he claimed to be like Lincoln. He automatically thinks racial tension, civil war. I must be just like Lincoln. What? Oh my God. Who does he think he is? Oh man. He compared himself to Lincoln. Is he insane? If he means he's like Lincoln because there's probably going to be a civil war right now and he's inciting it. Well, Lincoln didn't incite the Civil War, but anyway. But I mean, is he literally insane? And what happens if a president is declared insane? I mean, is there anything in place? Well, there is something in place. You have to invoke Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. And it's been discussed before. Just 2 years ago, FBI Director McCabe discussed it before being fired by Trump. He was fired by Trump in early 2018. Gee, what a shock. Yeah. The wording is, whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the president pro tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting president. And I hate Pence, but I sure do wish he was in office instead of Trump right now. I mean, Pence is a horrible religious zealot, probably worse than Trump, because I think Pence might actually believe it. But it would probably do more good than harm to have Pence as president right now. The law must rely on reliable facts regarding the president's physical or mental faculties. But at this point, is there a case? Is there a case to remove the president? Can we say it's valid? I mean, he's living in a Nepenthian world, and And I'm worried about his several weeks of hydroxychloroquine that he was taking. I mean, the side effects of hydroxychloroquine are paranoia and delusions. Those are some of the side effects of this drug that he was taking for 3 weeks. He should be removed from office at least temporarily until the drugs have completely left his system. I think he stopped taking them, but still, I mean, there has to be some long-lasting effects that cause some sort of psychosis. He may be insane. Anyway, back to his photo op. If you remember, yesterday he went to the St. John Paul. This was just yesterday. He went to the St. John Paul II National Shrine. And religious leaders everywhere, including the Archbishop, they were horrified. I mean, the Archbishop said, "I find it baffling and reprehensible that any Catholic facility would allow itself to be so egregiously misused and manipulated in a fashion that violates our religious principles, which call us to defend the rights of all people, even those with whom we might disagree." He also said, St. Pope John Paul II was an ardent defender. Lost my place. Okay, here we go. One more time. St. Pope John Paul II was an ardent defender of the rights and dignity of human beings. His legacy bears vivid witness to the truth. Gregory said, he certainly would not condone the use of tear gas and other deterrents to silence, scatter, or intimidate protesters for a photo opportunity in front of a place of worship and peace. The old picture that I just love is bombing for peace is like having I'm not going to say it, effing for virginity. Bombing for peace is like effing for virginity. I remember that. It's a great protest sign. I'll never forget it. And in a laugh out loud moment for me anyway, and I was laughing out loud when I was reading this. Trump admits he went into his bunker during the protests, but it was only for an inspection. Oh, jeez. Are you kidding me? It was only for an inspection. Wow. And I'll apologize for calling Trump a pussy the other day. I take it back. That was derogatory. There isn't a woman I know who would be that afraid to run into their damn bunker. If he believes so much in these peaceful protesters, why doesn't he join them? I mean, seriously. I've joined protesters. I worry. I've been a little worried about joining them because I'm not African American. I stand with them for sure. For decades I've stood with them, and I'm just so sick of what's going on. I'm sick of having to see protests about it every few years. I'm so sick of people dying because of the police and the ingrained racism of these people. Even if it isn't overt, it's still there. And it's going to be really hard to get rid of. There's a lot of work to be done. And in more Donald Trump news, he's been doubling down on his threat to send troops to other states. He seems to be getting a lot of pushback. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Wednesday that he does not support the use of active duty military forces in quelling countrywide unrest. Esper said that the measure should be used only as a last resort and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not one of those we are not in one of those situations now, he said. I do not support invoking the Insurrection Act. And mind you, invoking the Insurrection Act really isn't the question. It's whether or not the Insurrection Act allows the president to do it. And it doesn't. Even if he invoked the Insurrection Act and said, oh, okay, I'm going to send troops to other states, he can't do it unless those other states request it. Now, tonight at 5 o'clock, Donald Trump, which is, I guess, 2 o'clock Pacific, Donald Trump is going to have a speech, and I think he's going to invoke the Insurrection Act. He's a fool. He's an idiot. And again, I'll say, as soon as military troops show up in my city, I'm going to be in front of the tanks and I'm going to be killed. I am not going to let that happen. Not while I'm alive. Absolutely not. And more news about poor choices by cities and police departments and so on and so forth. In a really poor choice by the LAPD, they moved protesters that they were arresting into Jackie Robinson Stadium for processing. Oh, man. That was really a bad location choice. After pushback from faculty at the University of California in Los Angeles, the city's police department has vacated the school's baseball stadium after using it as a field jail to process demonstrators detained during protest over the killing of Floyd. The UCLA faculty wrote in a letter to the chancellor and executive vice chancellor that the Los Angeles Police Department had arrested students and other demonstrators for violating curfew and taken them on packed buses to the field. This field named for the first African-American player in Major League Baseball. This was really a poor choice by the LAPD. This was done without UCLA's knowledge or permission. The university said in a statement, as lessee of the stadium, we informed local agencies that UCLA will not grant permission should there be a request like this in the future. And I don't blame them. This is really, that's like eating chicken and eggs at the same time. If you guys get the reference. And then here in Los Angeles, people showed up at the mayor's house. I'm sorry. I mispronounced house. I mean, I mispronounced giant mansion. Hundreds were outside protesting peacefully. The mayor's been facing backlash for calling in the National Guard. He took a knee in a downtown protest, but not for the one at his mega mansion. When the protest was going on at his mega mansion, he was downtown for a press conference, and he invited a 16-year-old African-American boy to speak. Like that makes things better. It's a start, but it doesn't really do anything. It's just a photo op, just like same thing that Donald Trump's doing. People are calling for healing, but I kind of disagree. I mean, healing? If you're a soldier at war and you're surrounded by a hail of bullets and you get shot, are you concerned about healing in the moment? Are you? Or are you more concerned about stopping the bullets or getting out of way of the bullets? You can worry about healing later. You got to worry about your life right now. This isn't the time for healing. This is the time for fixing. We need to fix what's going on. And protesters in New York cheered hospital workers, and the hospital workers cheered back at them as they were marching by the hospital. The hospital workers were sitting out in front. And this is kind of interesting. I mean, I've been concerned about the coronavirus. I mean, think about what you're doing at a protest. They've shown that the reason that the coronavirus spread so easily at church choirs is because of the singing and using your voice and yelling out loud. And that's what protesters are doing. They're using their voice and yelling out loud, and the coronavirus can spread very easily in something like that. I showed up at the Hollywood protest yesterday and wanted to join in. But I was concerned about that because I'm older, honestly. I was also concerned about what people would think because I'm not considered black by any means. I'm Hispanic, and I'm barely considered Hispanic. If I go to my mother's homeland, Dominican Republic, I'm considered a gringo, which means I'm white. But when I was a kid growing up on the outskirts of Washington, D.C., I was considered a spick, the only spick at the school. So I'm well familiar with racism. I was the only Hispanic at that school other than my sister. One of my sisters. And was until 8th grade when a young lady showed up, and she was also Hispanic. So I want to help. I certainly stand with protesters. But I want to speak out, but I'm worried if I speak out and I'm really loud and obnoxious as I usually am, that they will get angry with me because I'm not African American. In other news, Mark Zuckerberg. There was a recording of the meeting about Trump's tweet, and Zuckerberg said Trump's tweet on the looting and shooting wasn't a dog whistle for racists. Because people were saying that's what it was, and that's why it should have been removed. I think it's really time for Zuckerberg to step down in an active role at Facebook. There are many kinds of racism under passive and active racism, and that's probably one of them. He doesn't recognize an obvious dog whistle. He doesn't know his history. In other news, there's another SpaceX Falcon 9 launch planned for tonight. But the weather reports aren't looking good, and I think they're going to have to skirt this launch window. I don't think it's going to happen tonight. It may or may not. This is just to send up some satellites. But this is 2 launches within a week. I mean, that's insane. That's crazy. We've never seen anything like this. But they've been doing a lot of launches every week and practicing and getting ready to do official launches. And they've done a few official launches with satellites that they were launching. But this is to launch a bunch of satellites tonight. Numerous ones. Anyway, that's it for now. June 3rd, 2020. I'm Peter Lawrence, reporting from Los Angeles. Thanks for listening.